Why should Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans be confident in their team heading into the second half of the season? We're going to break it down for you right now. Let's go.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we thank you for making us your first listen or view of the day. I am James Yarcho, deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com, joined by Tampa Bay Buccaneers staff writer Brianna Dix. Brianna, welcome to the show. Appreciate you joining for the very first time. Excited to hear what you have to say about the first half of the season and what we have to look forward to. But of course, you can follow everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs, and at Brianna Dix NFL. Again, we thank you for making us your first listen or view of the day. Today's episode is sponsored by Simply Safe Home Security with Fast Protect technology, exclusively from Simply Safe. 24/7 monitoring agents capture evidence to accurately verify a threat for faster police response. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Visit simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl to learn more. Brianna, the Buccaneers are preparing to enter the second half of their season, where they're able to kind of hit that reset button, right?
Mm-hmm.
At 5-5, first place in the NFC South. We're going to discuss the biggest key to their potential success the rest of the year in just a little bit, but let's take a look at the first half of the year. And I want to start with Devin White, captain of the team, defensive player of the month for September, appeared to hit a bit of a lull where there was a lot of outside criticism, both from the media and from former players about his play. But he's bounced back the last couple of weeks.
Yes, that he has.
Yeah, he was named Defensive Player of the Week for his performance against the Seattle Seahawks. How important, obviously you're around Devin a lot, how important do you think it was for Devin to, as he said, find that love of the game again and return to the player that started off the season so well?
I think it's really important because, I mean, he's the guy that wears the green sticker. He's communicating the calls. He has that captain badge. So he is a tone setter on this defense, and he's one of the guys that this team looks up to, and he's a person that has to set that standard of excellence on and off the field for this team. And I think you can't say enough about the way that he has stacked games since facing that criticism, and especially on Sunday against the Seahawks in Munich, where 2 hours before we took off for that trip, he got the call that his father had passed away. And not only did he get on the plane and play a game 3 days later, but to have the impact that he had, to lead the team in tackles, to get 2 sacks, and to have a takeaway, snapping that 5-game skid where the Cowboys, or with the Bucs not getting a takeaway. So I think that was pivotal for this team. And just, I mean, even when he wasn't necessarily dropping the quarterback on the ground, he was pushing the pocket. He was pushing guys into Geno Smith's face. He was breaking up screens. He was making tackles for loss. He was all around the field showcasing that closing speed and just his ability to shoot gaps. So I think his strides forward are going to made a huge difference in this defense, and are going to continue to spearhead this team as they progress throughout the year.
Yeah, no question. He's definitely one of the emotional leaders. He's a leader on and off the field. It was good to see him kind of, talk about finding that love of the game again. And of course, our hearts and condolences went out to him when that news came out. Just an absolutely awful situation to find that out when you're getting ready to go fly all the way to Germany to play a game. It's bad news no matter when you get it, but especially the timing of that. So it's been great to see Devin kind of take that uptick. And something else that has taken that uptick recently has been the offense. And we can't talk about the first half of the season without talking about the ups and downs of the offensive side of the ball. In the running game started off just red hot in the first couple of weeks and then kind of fell apart for a stretch. Now it seems they found a little bit of a rhythm. You hope that carries over from Seattle through the bye into Cleveland. But has it been a matter of finding continuity along the offensive line when you've replaced the entire interior? You've had Luke Gedeke in, then you bring in Nick Leverett as Gedeke's dealing with injury. You had Jensen go out day 2 of training camp, and Robert Hainsey's learning this position still after being drafted out of Notre Dame. So is it about that continuity, or do you feel that there have maybe been some other factors for the Buccaneers as they try to figure out how to get that run game going?
I think it is about, I think it all goes back to continuity. I mean, I think that's one of the things where you almost have a tendency to like roll your eyes, because I mean, that's just a word that coaches constantly stress when talking about the offensive line. But I mean, when you had Ryan Jensen go down during training camp, you don't have Ali Marpet, you don't have Alex Kappa, you bring in Shaq Mason, who has played with Tom Brady before in New England, but I mean, he's new to this team. And then you have Luke Gedeke, a rookie who's coming in that played right tackle at Central Michigan, did some work at left guard just in practices because the coaching staff knew that he was a natural fit there. So not only is he coming into a position that he really hasn't spent much time at and has a very small sample size at, but then he's having to switch sides, and you're having to use that muscle memory in moving everything over. I mean, it's almost like, you know, working with your non-dominant hand. I mean, he was a guy that was trying to write during, you know, he was trying to write left-handed to try and train his mind towards that side of the ball. He was watching film in the mill room. You know, I mean, there are all these pieces that it's going to take time for that to work together. And of course, as football fans, they aren't the most forgiving in that aspect and being patient, but it's something that it's just going to take those games stacked together. But I think you're starting to see the fruition of that. And I can't say enough about the job that Nick Leverett did. I mean, this is a guy that had the flu, did not feel great getting on that plane, was wearing a mask. I mean, you could just tell he was struggling a little bit walking up those steps. But I mean, he went out there and just from the interior, they had a very, very phenomenal game, just giving Tom Brady enough time standing back in the pocket, opening up those holes that Rachaad White just immediately hit. And I think you're starting to see all of that cohesion come to fruition and work together and hopefully continue throughout the second half of the season for the Bucs.
Yeah, no question about it. I've been incredibly impressed with what we've seen out of Nick Leverett. And I've been harsh on Luke Gedeke. I'll admit that, but I do think he was kind of thrown into the deep end there.
Yes, baptism by fire.
Yeah, it was out of his control. And he has shown flashes of the ability that he can have. I think it's about still trying to develop and learn the NFL game. And like you said, he's having to retrain his brain to basically, you know, learn a completely different way of approaching, you know, pass blocking, run blocking, all of that. So it's nice to see that continuity starting to pay off, giving Brady some more time, opening up some running lanes. And we do have to talk about one of those rookies that benefited from that against Seattle, and of course, Rachaad White. But there have been some really, really impressive rookie performances over the course of the first 10 weeks. You know, in the last 2 weeks, you've had two rookie heroes, Cade Otton with his game-winning touchdown against the Rams, Rachaad White's performance against the Seahawks. And then there's Jake Camarda, who has been an absolute weapon for this team.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where he's punting from. He can flip the field and set the defense up for success. So talk a little bit about the growth that you've seen out of these rookies from the time training camp started all the way up until now at the bye week.
Yeah, I think it's been extremely impressive to see just the immediate impact that the three that you mentioned have had. And I mean, for Rachaad White, I mean, coming out of Arizona State, he was a guy that was kind of known as being one of the shiftiest backs in the Pac-12, you know, with just his elusiveness in the open field, like his ability to, you know, quickly bounce runs outside. And we've seen that in recent weeks. And he was a big proponent of them being able to get the run game going against the Seahawks, and just his vision, that slippery, you know, slash style. I mean, just those angry runs in the stiff arm. I mean, my gosh, he straight up like stole Quandre Diggs' soul. It absolutely revved up the crowd in Munich. But I mean, I think he's made a really big impact and has a really great complementary style to Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette is a bigger back. He has more of that, the power through tackles, but then you've got a guy like Rashad that is really shifty, can make those quick jump cuts, can hit top speed almost instantaneously. And I think they kind of can form that really dynamic 1-2 punch. And, Leonard Fournette got injured with the hip pointer against the Seahawks, but I think hopefully moving forward, we can see more of that dynamic ability between those two, because I think they do have the potential to be a really lethal tandem for this team. And then for Cade Otton, I think what's been the most impressive thing for me is historically, when you look at the tight end position, I mean, rookies don't come in and make a really big impact, because in college, it's more of they're either that really big slot receiver or they're solely an inline blocker as an extension of the run game. But you don't really see a lot of those intricacies that they have to take on at the NFL level. So whenever tight ends come into the league, they face typically a really lengthy learning curve in acclimation to the NFL. But for Cade Otton to immediately come in, to have the success that he's having, to be able to create that guy over the middle of the field that can get open, that can box out defenders, is that nuanced route runner, and to make an impact and to have those timely plays in critical moments to move the chains that he's done, I think is really impressive when you consider typically what happens at that hybrid position. And then Jake Camarda, man, MVP, honestly, in a lot of games. I mean, the way he was able to constantly pin the Rams inside their own 20-yard line. I mean, had a 74-yard punt. I mean, just absolutely sensational play. And I mean, you don't typically hear a lot of like special teams players or punters, especially, that, occupy headlines. But when it's typically for, a really awful reason. But in his case, I mean, just props to what he's doing and giving this team an opportunity to win games.
Yeah, well, we have talked about the team that has been, and coming up in just a little bit, we will talk about the team that will be. But first, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Tommy John's. Getting stuck in Black Friday crowds, super uncomfortable. Shopping Tommy John's Black Friday sale from your couch, super duper comfortable. Shop Tommy John's Black Friday sale right now and give the gift of comfort to everyone on your list, including yourself, with brand new Tommy John underwear, loungewear, and pajamas. With over 18 million pairs sold, giving Tommy John has become a holiday tradition. 97% of women and men love getting a gift from Tommy John. That's why Tommy John doesn't have customers. They have fanatics, and every gift is backed by Tommy John's best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free guarantee. Shop Tommy John's Black Friday sale right now and get 30% off site-wide at TommyJohn.com/locked-on. 30% off everything right now at TommyJohn.com/locked-on. TommyJohn.com/locked-on. See site for details. Segment 2 here of the Locked On Bucs podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view of the day. For your second listen, check out the biggest headlines in all of sports with Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube and wherever you are listening to this podcast. We are going to get to know Brianna a little bit better in just a little bit, including the return of the rapid fire segment. But there's more football to discuss, and more importantly, a 7-game stretch where the Bucs can really start to get on a roll. So back-to-back wins after falling to 3-5, and the Bucs have right now 2 teams remaining on their schedule that are over 500. Mm-hmm. Why do you think Buccaneers fans should be confident that they can start to string quite a few wins together here over the course of the next month and a half?
I think fans can be confident because of what the issues that we've seen plague this team over the previous games to knock them into that 3-5 spot. I think they put all of that together against this Seahawks game. Offensively, they converted 10 of 15 third downs. They were 2 of 2 in the red zone. They were able to create that balanced attack. They were able to get the run game going, which then in turn set up play action. Tom Brady had more time in the pocket, was able to survey the field, was able to take shots downfield. You saw more of the post routes. You saw more go routes. And Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Julio Jones were the beneficiaries of that, because that is the type of system where he thrives in. I mean, to have 7 games with 40 plus pass attempts, that is not sustainable for any quarterback, much less a 45-year-old man that is in the pocket. You're not going to be able to do that down the stretch of a season. So I think if they're able to continue on the trend that they are in that aspect, I think you're going to see this team have a lot of success, because that makes it to where teams have to pick their poison, because you're going to have Rashad White, you're going to have Leonard Fournette. Well, then you've got all of their pass catchers. I mean, teams don't know who to allocate resources to, because any one of them can gash you either on the ground or through the air. And then for the defense, they were able to stop the run. Coaches have stressed in recent weeks the missed assignments, the blown coverages, the poor run fits, the missed tackles, all of these things that have really been uncharacteristic for a team that has typically been dominant in that aspect, in forcing teams to become one-dimensional and to have to throw it. But now they had gone away from that a little bit, but I think to see them have a really good game against the team that was predicated on the run. I mean, the Seahawks were one of the best running teams in the NFL. Kenneth Walker was playing absolutely dominant, was gashing teams on the ground and just demoralizing team after team. But for the Bucs to come in and have kind of that get right game against a Seattle team that was red hot coming into that game, I think gives a lot of confidence and encouragement in this second half of the season. And I really think potentially we will look back and see that game-winning drive against the Rams as kind of that turning point in this season, because I think when they had that, that's when that confidence shifted. And so then the next game, you were already seeing a little bit of that in just the warm-ups, and as they were getting going and just that plane ride over, that started to change, that started to shift things. And so I think you're going to see the fruition of that as the season progresses.
Yeah, you talk about an outstanding defensive performance, and we talked about Devin White earlier, but let's talk about the loss of Shaq Barrett. And I realized that was earlier. We're looking ahead, but it seems that Joe Tryon-Shoyinka has taken it upon himself to be a one-man wrecking crew for this defense. Tell us about what Shaq means to this team, both in the locker room and as a leader on the field. And now how we've seen some of these other guys like Tryon-Shoyinka, Carl Nassib, Anthony Nelson, they've stepped up and they've filled the void as best they can, of course. How is that going to play out, do you think, moving forward the rest of the year? Is that something that is also sustainable?
I think it is. And in Todd Bowles' system, he constantly likes to move guys around, to mix up coverages on the back end, to move guys around to create those advantageous one-on-one matchups. So he likes to shift things around and keep the legs fresh. So you've seen Anthony Nelson come in, you've seen the addition of Carl Nassib pay off. And yes, Shaq Barrett is a key on this defense, but I think when as they move forward, hopefully you can see the strides they take in setting the edge, because I think that has been a problem for this team with the mobile quarterbacks or some of those quick passing games that teams have used to try and mitigate the Bucs pressure and their pass rush that's had success. So I think moving forward, to be able to see potentially them being able to set the edge and control gaps is going to be really critical in forcing teams to be one-dimensional, or if they can stop the run, because I think that's where teams have exploited this Bucs defense in recent weeks. So it's going to be massive. Can Joe Tryon-Shoyinka step up? Because, I mean, really, Larry Foote was talking about it the other day, but he hasn't had a lot of experience in this position, because he really didn't play have that full starting role in college. And then he comes in here, and really his first year, he was in kind of a myriad of roles to just try and maximize his time on the field as a rookie. So he was rushing from the 5 tech, the 3 technique. I mean, he was all over the map. But now he really gets to hone in on that 3-4 outside linebacker D end role. And I think you're going to start to see him put things together and have more of a dominant performance, especially with Shaq Barrett out. Like, he's going to have to step up, and this defense is going to have to come together to try and replace what Shaq Barrett brought to this defense.
Yeah, it was a heartbreaking loss. Of course, Shaq was playing incredibly against the Ravens, and
right.
Hat tip to Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. He's really stepped up quite a bit. I'm excited to see what else he can do the rest of the year. But you take a look, Julio looks good right now. Mike Evans is still one of the best of the game. Godwin is getting healthier, finally got into the end zone, and we should see Russell Gage return sooner than later. And something else that I noticed is the Tampa Tom persona is slowly starting to creep back in, where Brady, especially on his social medias, he seems a little looser, seems to be having a little bit more fun, seems to be acting a little bit goofier. And that's something that Bucs fans became kind of accustomed to from the minute he set foot in Tampa in 2020. So you take a look at the way the offense seems to be starting to get it together. Tom Brady seems to be, returning kind of to his normal self. Is this a team where the back half of the season, we're going to start to see that offense put up, over 20 points a game with ease? Or is the foundation of the 2022 Buccaneers on the backs of the defense, and the offense just has to make sure that they're complementing the defense enough to get out of these games with wins?
I think you're going to see both of them work together, honestly, because in a lot of games, like you mentioned, the defense was playing lights out in a team that is used to being that juggernaut and having that offensive onslaught. You didn't see that. They couldn't sustain drives. They couldn't convert on third down. They really couldn't do anything, and we're just out of sync. I mean, Brady wasn't able to connect with wide receivers. Guys weren't getting open. I mean, it was just mistake after mistake after mistake. And I think a lot of it goes back to, some of the issues that the offensive line was having and their inability to create those holes or create adequate protection up front. But as the season wears on and you're starting to get a lot more of those pieces back and guys healthy, and I think you're going to be able to help the defense by staying on the field and sustaining drives and converting on those third downs and moving down the field to give the defense more of a rest. Because I think that was one of the biggest things that plagued that team is, okay, the defense would start out playing really great and really hot, and then they would get fatigued because the offense couldn't stay on the field, and then the defense was having to run right back on the field and immediately try and kickstart something to get things going. And then it was just this cycle that just kept going on and on and on. So now if the offense is able to create that balanced attack and find ways to exploit defenses, then I think it's going to work hand in hand, and you're going to see both of them coming together like you did against Seattle and have the impact that they did.
Yeah, if they're able to do that, there's no doubt in my mind they can go on a run, and they're going to be playing a heck of a lot more than just 7 more games. All right, coming up in just a moment, we are going to learn more about Brianna and her journey from Texas to Tampa. But first, of course, this episode is brought to you by betonline.net. Betonline.net is your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. They've got it all at betonline.net, where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are currently tied with the Dolphins at plus 1,800 to win the Super Bowl. And if you love sports podcasts like this one, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They are the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Wrapping things up here on the Locked On Bucs podcast, and this is Brianna's first appearance on the show. So let's get to know a little bit about where she started, how she ended up in Tampa, and then we're going to hit her with the ever popular rapid fire questions. So Brianna, how did your journey into sports journalism start, and how did you find yourself very far from Texas and in Tampa, Florida to cover the Buccaneers?
Well, I grew up watching the NFL with my dad every single Sunday. And so that developed into a passion, but something that I knew that I wholeheartedly wanted to pursue as a career. So I had a broadcast communications major, and at that point I didn't go to a school that had a, sports journalism department like a lot of big public schools do. So I really had to challenge myself and had to network and create relationships. And I was able to interview former Dallas Cowboys during my time at Dallas Public University. And then kind of through that, I had an internship with the Cowboys in 2016 during Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott's first year as a game day event presentation intern. And I really enjoyed that, just to getting a behind the scenes glimpse of what an NFL game day entails. And I think that was good just for a lot of the productional aspects. And then from there is how I got connected with the boss that I previously had at D210 Sports, a small sports station in Dallas that covered the Cowboys. And I was there, the Cowboys beat reporter on site. So I was at, the Star every day, going to press conferences, open locker room, working home games. But I was a little bit of a two threat. I did both on camera and writing. So honestly, looking back, I don't know how I managed those 4 years. That was a lot of hours, a lot of work, either, scripting reports, doing the on camera, writing articles, coming up with questions. But at the same time, I think that really just developed in me the work ethic that I have and the passion that I have for the game. And especially during COVID, I think for everybody that was a challenge, because a lot of those stories and a lot of those relationships that you build, you weren't able to do. We were working from home. You couldn't have one-on-ones. You couldn't be in the locker room. So I think that made you start to realize, okay, what are ways that I can better myself, and how can I come at this from a unique angle? So I think for me, it was just really good for personal growth during that time. But I knew that I wanted a different challenge and to further grow myself. So I started just kind of putting, applications out there. And then the job with the Bucs opened up, and interviewed for that. And it's funny, coming to Tampa to apartment hunt was the first time I had actually ever stepped foot in Tampa. I had been to Florida a lot growing up, I had been to Disney World several times in Orlando, I'd gone to Universal, had done stuff in Fort Lauderdale, Key West, but I just never had made it over to Tampa. But I've always been a warm climate girl, I guess, being in Texas, and had kind of just, my body had warmed up to that type of weather. So, but it's been an absolute blast. And this organization truly is very, very family oriented, and has been just an absolute blessing. The people that I work with and the staff that we have here in Tampa.
Yeah, no doubt about it. My interactions with everybody inside that building has always been fantastic. And right. I'm sure getting to work with them on a day-to-day basis, even though I'm sure Scott gives you grief, but you just got to dish it right back. I'm sure it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it is time for the rapid fire segment. So we're stepping completely away from sports. We're getting to know more about just you as a person and some of your interests. So I have 5 rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
I am. Let's do it.
All right.
I guess.
What is your all-time favorite movie?
Room of the Titans. Hands down. Hands down.
All right. You can only see one artist in concert for the rest of your life. Who are you getting tickets to go see?
Oh my goodness. That's a challenge. I'm going to go with Ed Sheeran.
That's my wife would approve. She loves Ed Sheeran. The first time you and I met during training camp, while the Dolphins were in town, you were wearing a Buccaneers Star Wars shirt. And due to my love of Star Wars, I have to know, who is your favorite character from Star Wars of all time? Could be from a movie, a series, a book, anything.
I'm going to go with Han Solo.
Oh, great choice.
I can really appreciate the sarcasm. I love his little quick comebacks. I mean, just the banter. Love it.
Yeah. Harrison Ford is the GOAT. All right. If you were not covering sports, what career path do you think you would have chosen?
Say a baker.
Ooh. Now, I'm a former chef.
Oh, I love to cook. I love to bake. For me, it's therapeutic. Like, I love trying new recipes. I love sweets. Love food in general. So I always I like to bring snacks to the office to bake things like around Thanksgiving, Christmas. Like, I will be the girl that's walking in the door with that, like the grandma that would make all the little goodies and bring them to the neighbors with, the little tins of chocolate and goodies. And that'll be me.
All right. Well, that is a perfect segue to our final question. And as I always do, hat tip to Katie Nolan. I don't even remember the podcast that she used to host where she asked this question, but I stole it from her, so I have to give her credit. But you are about to be put to death, and you are being given one final meal. What is that meal going to be? I need an entree, a dessert, and a beverage.
Ooh. Okay. The food would definitely be Italian. I love Italian food. So I would say a combination of some type of like spaghetti, marinara, ziti, and then also the Alfredo side, maybe like an Alfredo pesto pasta, some garlic bread. I love all things carbs, love all things Italian. Drink wise, oh, that's tough. Because with Italian, I feel like Moscato would probably be the better match. But, well, actually, I'm going to go with coffee. I love coffee. I'm an addict. I'm a coffee enthusiast. So I would say just a really great like caramel macchiato. And dessert, this is tough. I love desserts, and I have had a lot of desserts in my lifetime. Ooh, really anything with caramel, honestly. I'm obsessed with caramel. I could probably just drink it by itself. So I would say maybe just like a caramel brownie, like a turtle brownie with maybe some pecans in there.
That sounds delicious. I'm glad it's almost lunchtime because now I'm all hungry.
I know. Me too. I'm starving now.
All right. Well, Brianna, thank you so much for joining the show. Hopefully it is the first of many appearances that you will have. Let everybody know what you are working on over there with the Buccaneers and at Buccaneers.com.
Yes. So I am on at Brianna Dix NFL is Twitter, and then on Instagram is just at Brianna M. Dix. Facebook, I don't know if people do that anymore, but I'm also on Facebook posting a lot of Bucs things, pretty much any social media it's just constant Bucs things that I post on there. So one of the main things that I work on every week, I do a scouting report on the upcoming opponent. So next week for Cleveland, that'll be going up on Wednesday. And then if you go to Buccaneers.com under the news category, there is a Brianna's Blitz tab and a Behind the Buccaneers tab. And those are things that I've done. And then the Behind the Buccaneers specifically is a page devoted to the long form features that I've done on players, just showcasing who they are as people and who they are behind the number. And, whether it was Levante David's Father's Day piece, Jamel Dean's mental health piece, Devin White's story through loss, losing his brother. And then I'm actually working on one now for the My Cause, My Cleats campaign, a story on Kate Otten, overcoming loss and really just trying to educate people on Parkinson's disease and Parkinson's awareness in finding a cure. So I think for me, honestly, it's been really beneficial just to try and educate myself also, because I think for a lot of people, we understand the severity of Parkinson's and what that word means. But at the same time, we don't really understand exactly what all that disease entails. So that's what I'm hoping to do through that story and through telling his mom's story, and in turn his legacy through her. So
that is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, everybody make sure you go check that out. And Brianna, again, thank you so much for joining the show. Make sure you are following her on Twitter at Brianna Dix NFL. Of course, check out everything that I'm doing over at BucsNation.com. Follow the show. Follow me at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs. And shout out to my co-host David at D Harrison 82. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire those cannons. And we thank you so much for joining us right here at Locked On Bucs.